Okay, we're back, and it's COMP123, and it's week 6, lesson 6, part 4. And I want to build with you kind of a deck of cards. How will we go about doing this kind of thing? And I want to be able to shuffle them, and I want to be able to deal them. Okay? So in order for us to do that, we're going to need to know how to use arrays a little bit. Again, and we also have to figure out how we're going to use classes very nicely. And also something else I want you to think about is how do I use constants that make sense. We're going to kind of fool with this for the next couple hours, approximately. Well, not exactly an hour, but maybe an hour and 45 or something like that. Okay. And that's what we're going to be talking about today for the remainder. So let's try and do this thing. And let's think about this together. So here I am. I'm going to open up Visual Studio, which I invite you to do as well. We're going to start a new project. And it's going to be a C# project that's going to be a console application. And we're going to call this, I'm just going to call this COMP123 lesson 6 part 3. Okay, because we did part 1 and 2 yesterday. Right, we'll do part 3 today in terms of what we're putting together. I will, of course, go on to GitHub with you and create my repository so that you can certainly take a look at it. Okay, so it's COMP123, lesson 6, and it's part 3. I'm going to go into Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go to Changes. I'm going to say created base C# VS project and commit. I'm going to go into Home and unsync commits, and I'm going to fire through and publish everything. And there you go. Okay, so I've got my basic the beginning of what we're going to be talking about. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm just going to close this off for now because I don't need it. You guys can access it. It's up there now. So here's our program, and this is what's going to house, like as normal, some of the stuff we're doing. I'm going to take away some things today. I'm going to take away this string args piece here from our main. And remember, we don't really need this piece right now because we're not doing we're not accessing our program from the console. We would need that if we're passing parameters to our program from the console, which we're not doing. Now, what I mean by that is launching our program from the console. Let's say I have an executable file, like a .exe, and I called it card shuffle or something, or card game, whatever it would be, right? And I said card game, and I passed it some kind of parameter before it started off. This comes into the program before it starts, as an example. Then I would have, that's what that main with a string array of args. That's what it is, because you can have multiple arguments that come in, and then what of course you'd want to do is you want to loop through the string of arguments that you could take in. They're string arguments, and you could use those arguments as switches, if you will, to control the execution of the program. We don't need to do that, so we're taking it out. Okay, I'm not going to change my namespace for this example, but really what we're building here is a card game. So how do I build this card game out? What do I need, right? So let's think about the problem. When we play cards, we need cards. That's the first thing we need to do. So I think it's the first card class we're going to build. Or the first class we're going to build is the card class. I'm going to go right-click here on our project, add, and we're going to say new item, and we're going to go to class, okay? And I'm going to call this the card class, because you need cards in order for you to shuffle it, right? So I've got my card class. Okay, card class is cool, right? And that's okay for the card class. The card class is going to have a couple things, right? It's going to have, if I look at my instance variables, let's put that in place here. You know, these are my instance variables, which should be private by default. That's the way we want to do it, right? Then the first instance variable I want to talk about, there's two that exist in every card, right? One of them, I'm using the underscore again like I did before, one of them is going to be called the card face, right? Which is of type what? String, right? Right? So it's called the face card, right? So you might have like, what does it look like on the face? Is it an ace? Is it a 2? Is it a 3? Who's never played cards before, right? If you haven't played cards before, we'll talk about what cards are. But basically what they are is you need the face. So that's one thing that all cards have. And the other thing is that all cards have is a suit, right? So you have the face card, the face value, if you will, and the suit, right? Now there's a different way of doing this thing. You could say instead of face, you could say the value of the card. So if it's a 1 or a 2 or an ace or king or whatever, right? But really, let's just call it the face of the card. And the suit would be, there's different suits, right? There would be clubs, diamonds, hearts, spades, right? Okay, so this is cool. I like that you would have an option to have both. Now, do you remember how we did enums back in Programming 1? So I'm going back to Programming 1 again. Some of you may go look at me and go, he's talking in tongues, he's speaking in tongues. What are enums, right? Well, enums are enumerations, and we could use those to kind of discuss. Instead of making this a private string suit, we could kind of describe all the different types of suits and faces that we could have, and I can create those in enums. For now, let's leave that as is. Let's leave these a face, the card. All it does is it's just right now. All it has is a couple of things. It has a face and a suit, and really, if you think about what it is, it's a data item, right? A data item. So really, if anything, it's a key value. It has key value pairs, if you will, a pair of data items. One that's a face, the other one that's a suit. Okay, do I need to instantiate? Do I need to instantiate any kind of properties for the card? Am I going to have to set the face or the suit after I've created the card, or change the face or the suit after I've created the card? That's the question I'd ask you. So once I create this card, can I physically in real life repaint it? Right. So that means there really should be no access to my private variables at all, except for being able to view what's on the card face. In order for me to view what's on the card face, I can never write to the card once it's been written, but I want to be able to view what's on the card face. What do I need? I need getters. I need read-only, because that's what I'm doing. I'm read-only properties for the card, right? So that's the first thing I do need. So I need some properties. So let's put that in. So I'll say properties. Okay? And again, you could pair this out a little bit at a time. We're going to build this slow. Okay? And let's see how far it takes us. Okay, cool. I've got my card. I've got my face. I've got my suit. I'm going to get some properties. Well, you know what? I'm probably going to want to do something like this. I probably want to be able to see the face and the suit of my card, right? Let's start like this. Let's start by thinking this. Now, there's another way of thinking about this. I want to start this way because this is the way most people will start thinking. Public, and I'm going to call it the same thing as the name, face, string, face, capital F, right? And then here's my code block, and I'm going to use a getter, right? And inside there, it's going to be, I'm going to return this dot underscore face, right? That's what's going to return. You're going to see when I want to access what the face is, I can access it this way. And I'm going to do the same thing. Then theoretically, I'll have to do the same thing for my suit, right? Capital S, right? I'm going to kind of scroll up here so you guys can see. Code block. I'm going to use a getter, and in there, I'm going to return this dot underscore suit. Underscore, of course, we're using as a convention to show that we're accessing instance variables that are private. If my instance variable was public, I wouldn't use the underscore. Somehow, if I had a public instance variable. Okay? Okay, cool. So I've got a couple of getters. So these are both read-only properties. I'm going to put them in there. So read-only, just so that it reminds you when you look at this code online. When I say make a couple read-only properties or make a read-only property for your assignment number 3, you'll know what I mean. Because you're going to have properties in your assignment 3. You're going to have interfaces. You're going to have all these things. Okay, cool. Okay, I haven't really described a constructor yet. And this is where I want my card to be created. When I create my card for the first time, this is where I would, again, conceptually, we're trying to conceptualize a physical object, you know, on a computer. I want to draw my card for the first time, right? I want to mention 2 things. I want to send into the constructor before I draw the card, right? I got to mention the face and the suit. So those are the things that have to be incoming into the constructor, and that's the only constructor I'm going to have. Okay? So here's my constructor. Again, this is a little bit more advanced than what we've done so far, so just bear with me as we go, right? And you'll see, it seems easy at first, but... Okay, inside my constructor, I'm going to take 2 variables. They're going to be string variables. It's going to be suit, lowercase, and with and also, of course, sorry, I'll do it in the same order, face and string suit. I'll pull this up in a second so you guys can see it. Bear with me. Okay. Yeah? You see it now? Of course, when we do this, I'm going to have to set them here. So I'm going to say this dot face is equal to face, the local variable. So my instance variable is, I'm going to assign the local variable to my instance variable here, right? And the same thing goes with suit, right? Does it make sense? So here I've assigned the value of the card. So here's my card, my properties, and you see like right now we've got like 40 lines of code. Right? It didn't take long for us to get there. Okay, cool. I'm starting off with my first class. I have a constructor. Maybe I need a method. And typically, you know what I would do? I would say, show me the card. Let's make the show method, right? And the show method would look something like this. So let's go over here. I'm going to just put I'm going to call this methods for now. You'll see how this is going to change. I'm going to change what I put in here for a second. And I'm going to put in here, it's going to be a public method, right? I'm going to call it show. It's going to return void, sorry. It's going to return void, right? And here it is. I'm going to make it capital S, okay, for show this time. Okay, public method, show. And the show method, what is it going to do? It's going to do a console.writeLine, right? Console.writeLine, and we're going to start showing the cards. So we're going to say something like this. The face, so that's our first thing, our first interpolation. So a king, an ace, a 1 of, right? And then our second item that we're going to interpolate of, I'll scroll up so you can see this, of an ace of hearts, right? That's the kind of way it would look, right? If it prints out. And then, of course, I'm going to have to put this dot face, right? And this underscore suit. Make sense? So when I actually access the card, right? If I want to use the show method, it'll kind of show me a ace of hearts, a 2 of diamonds, and so on. Yeah? Okay. This is all good. I like this. This is fun, fancy fun that we're doing right here. But we really have to test this out. And before I do anything else with this class, and this is what I recommend you guys do when you build your classes one by one, is you test them out to see if you're getting the right output. So let's create our test cases. So yes?
So as we don't have the set accessor here, I suppose you're planning to shuffle the card within the class. Are you?
I'm not. This card class, there's no shuffling.
Oh.
Remember, I can't shuffle the face of the card. If you have a physical card, I can't just press the button on the card and it's going to go, right? So right now we're just talking about the physical card. I can't change the physical card ever, right? This card is always going to be the same. Once I set it, it's set. Once I draw the card, it's drawn.
But the card represents all of the
No, this card only represents one physical card. That's what I'm doing right now. Think about one physical card, one object, one card,
Oh, one object.
one card,
Right.
right? Now I'm not doing all, I didn't do 52 cards here.
Okay.
I'm just doing one card. That's the deck that I'm going to build next, right?
Right. So it'll be the objects that will be like the 52.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm building slowly here, right? So just bear with me while you see. I like your thinking, but I think you're a little bit ahead of me for a second. Bear with me while I show you. Okay, so let us look at this now. So I'm in my main, and I have my card class that I've defined. Let me just actually, well, if you guys are following along, I'm going to just say added. This untracked file here. Added card class. So that way, for those people who are following along, you can follow along and you can have what I have. Just in case you've mistyped or whatever and it's not working for you, you can certainly look in the code online. There we go. Okay, I want to instantiate an example. I want to make a test. This is not going to be my final stuff. I'm just going to test my class out for the first time. So I'm going to do what I like to call experiments, right? It's an experiment because I don't have a game right now. I don't have anything right now. All I have is a card class and represents one card. That's all it does. And thank you for that clarification. So I want to instantiate my card. So I'm going to say, well, card, that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to call it my, or let's say my card. It's only one card, right? Is equal to new card. And if I open brackets, it says I need a face and I need a suit. Okay, a face and a suit. So my face is going to be, well, I can call it, ace, right? And my suit then would be, let's say, of hearts, right? That's how it would look. Ace of hearts, ace and hearts for my club, my card. I'm good. And then if I go my card dot show, right? My card dot show, and if I run it, oh wait. We're going to do a little method here because I hate when this happens all the time. Actually, it would be really cool if we had a code snippet, wouldn't it be? So I could go back and copy and paste as opposed to always doing this over and over again. And guess what? We have code snippets from before because I can just go into my previous project here, which I recommend you do, right? Instead of always retyping this stuff over and over again. God, haven't you got tired of me doing this already? And I can go into my program from my previous file because it's just a text file, right? And look, I've got my read key in this one. I don't want that one. I want to get the one that, so instead of me typing it, making mistakes, and spending a lot of time, this is lesson 4. Let's see if I can get in there. I probably have a good example of a project that works out. Hold on a second here. I want to go into lesson 6, part 1, which is this one. Okay, here's my program, and this is what I want. I'm just going to take this nice little code here, copy, and you have it online, by the way, on GitHub. And I'm going to go in here now, and instead of redoing it, I'm going to paste it, right? There it is. Instead of me typing it all out, that's a code snippet. And I'm going to extract this thing into a method. I'm going to right-click and highlight everything. I'm going to go refactor, extract method, which I'm going to call as wait for any key, which is what I'm going to call it, right? Wait for any key is what I'm going to call this. This is a method that I'm going to use. I'm going to save it. Okay, and just to go into to Team Explorer, because I've added that in, and I'm showing you how to do commits on a regular basis here, is added, wait for any key method, right? And commit. I'm going to go home, I'm going to go unsync commits, and I want to sync it with GitHub, and so now you have it. Okay, so now you're up to date with me. Okay, wait for any key, I'm going to go show my card, and what this will do is it will allow me to show whatever that's inside the card class. Let's take a look at this. Okay, ace of hearts. It does my show command. I'm able to store my values. I know my card class is working now, right? Let me just do that again, and then just for our purposes, let's change this from a properties, go into colors, change the background, and of course change my screen text to black, and go to font. I'm going to just change my font to Consolas just because I'm choosing that. And 20 so you guys can see it nice and big. Right? Ace of hearts. Please hit any key to exit. I'm going to hit any key and it takes me out. Okay, nothing complicated here, right? But I want to control user input, right? When I want someone to use my card, I don't want just to pass whatever random value he's going to put in here, right? It's a string, as an example, and right now when he has a string, there's two strings. There's ace and hearts. I could have just passed one string, ace of hearts, right? But I want to separate them in different values, right? How do I do that? First of all, even hearts and all this kind of stuff. I don't want him to input just anything in here. I want him to have some control, right? And we're going to always put hearts, diamonds, and spades. I'm going to keep typing it over and over again, which is a pain in the ass, right? I'm going to say it like that. So we know what I need. I need a constant, don't I? I need a constant that I can access, that I can always just say ace, and it's going to mean ace. And hearts, I can have hearts. And you know what? I want IntelliSense to help me type that in, as opposed to me typing it by hand over and over again, for God's sake, right? It's just killing me. How do we do this? Well, I know that ace is of faces, right? And hearts is of suits, right? So this is interesting. Let's do this thing. Let's add a couple of other classes, but they're going to be container classes. They're not going to have a constructor, right? And all they're going to have is a bunch of constants, right? They're going to be a bunch of constants. Okay, let's do this. So I'm going to right click. This is something new. Add, new item, class. And the first one I'm going to do is going to be called suits because it's easier with all caps. Actually, suits with just suits. The first one is caps, like a regular class, capital S. Okay, here's my suits class, right? My suits class. And in my suits, I'm going to start defining my constants, right? I have a bunch of them, but there's not a lot. There's only 4 suits here, right? And I want them to be fairly straightforward what they mean. So the first thing I know it's going to be a string const, right? Const for constant, right? If you guys forgot what that is. And the string constant is going to be, we're going to name it, the first one is going to be called hearts, capital S, capital, all caps. That is our convention for all constants. Constants are always going to be in all caps, right? And we're going to set the value of it to hearts. Am I missing something? It says invalid token const, right? Do I have to put it on this side? Right? Let's check this out, right? If I go here, if I go string hearts, and if I go const for constant, isn't that the right way to do it? Right? This is the right way to do it. Here's the other thing. Do I want to make this public or private? Public. Because they're a constant that I want to use all the time, right? So it's got to be a public constant string of hearts, and it's going to be this constant that I'm going to do, right? Called hearts. Okay, cool. Let's do the same thing with the other form. I'm just going to copy and paste these constants. And instead of hearts, we're going to say clubs, and this one will be clubs. Let's rename them. This one will be diamonds, and we'll do diamonds here. And of course, this one will be spades, all caps, and this one will be spades. Okay, so we got a bunch of these. You know what? I don't like the order of these things. I want to make them in alphabetical order just because that's how they're going to appear. So I'm going to move the hearts down under the diamonds. All right? Because that's the kind of guy that I am. Okay, cool. If I was to just do this, right, do I have access to this the way it is inside of my, my other classes? Do I have to do anything else here to make this go? That's my question to you. Well, let's check it out. If I go back to my program, here's my program, and I, instead of using hearts, right, because this is the first thing we changed, I'm going to go like this now. I'm going to go start typing suits dot Oh, look what I got here. I've got my code hinting coming in, hearts, right? I can pick from the type that I get, right? Okay, let's see if it works. I'm gonna run it now. Yeah, ace of hearts, works pretty good, eh? Okay, how about this? This is kind of interesting. I want to assess a value instead of a string, right? Because I want to know if ace, this is neat that I made it a string and all, but I don't want it to really be a string, do I? I need to know the value of the card if I'm going to compare the value of one card to another. So how would I do this? How would I do this, right? I could make it an integer, right? I could do that. That's great. And if I go back to my card class, right? Here's my string, and it's sorry, the face is a string. But what I really need here is a value, right? Because I can't alphabeticalize it. I can't look at it and go, hey, let's make it, let's sort it from ascending, an ascending value. And if I go ace 2, like the number 2, or 2, I'm going to probably do the, the words 2, something like that. I can't make it so that it has a value necessarily. I mean, I'd have to convert it. And if I have an ace, I'd have to convert that to something else. And the ace, by the way, has 2 values, right? Has a 1, or it could be a 14, depending on the situation, right? You follow me? Right? So I could make this an integer. I could do that. I could leave it as a string and convert it, right? Probably the easiest thing to do is do less conversion and make it an integer. If I do that, that means anything I put into my program, it's got to be something friendly that comes in here, but on the back end, on the card side, it comes in as, it has a value right away. So I can compare the values. That's one thing I want to try and do. Because when I get a hand, if I kind of do a hand, draw a hand, that might be a method, draw a hand, right? And my draw hand method, I want to know what the values are of my cards, right? Somehow. Okay, so there's a couple ways I could do this. I could create another class called faces, right? And I could make it so that instead of string constants, I can make them integer constants, where I have the friendly name here and the actual value here. And that's what I think I want to do. Okay, so let's just try that. This is one approach to the problem. This is not the only approach to the problem at all. There's many ways of doing this thing. And by the way, all we're doing is defining our card right now and how we're going to use it. We're conceptualizing how this is going to work in the long run. All right, so let's just do this. Add new item. I'm going to do a new class. It's going to be called face instead of like our suit face, right? And if you look at our face class, we're going to do the same thing as we did with the our suit class. We're going to say public static, public const, I won't use static yet, public const integer, and I'm going to say ace, this is how we're going to start off, is equal to 1, right? Does that make sense? I need to do a bunch of these ones, right? So I'm going to add all these ones in here. I'm making friendly names, right? Friendly names for the cards. Now I could do 2, right? Because it's a 2, ace 2, and so on, right? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, right? So here we go. So a 2 is a 2, right? A 3 is a 3. Follow me here. Even though you might think, hey, this is not right, right? Try and do what I'm doing here to understand what I'm doing. Why do I have to not instantiate? Ask your questions. Why am I not instantiating these classes? How can I get away without doing that? Why can I access a value of a class that I'm not instantiating? Right? How can I be doing that stuff? I'm going to upload this to GitHub in a second, so those people who are slow typers or who don't want to do this and just want to follow along, you can just download my stuff. Or if you're not physically here, right, you don't have to download anything. You just have to, or so you don't have to actually type anything. Here's Jack. Jack is 11. We know that, right? And here's queen, she's 12, and king, he's 13, right? And of course, ace has 2 values. How do we do that? How do we say ace is a 1 or a 14? Well, it's a 1 when it comes to if I'm dealing a card, as an example, and I'm adding it in, but it's also a 14. Let's leave it like this for now, and we'll deal with this high-low thing later on, okay? Because we can deal with it later, depending on the position of the cards and so on. And we may not even get there in this day, because it's going to take us some time to put all this stuff together anyway, right? So we have like 14 cards here, right? Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, Jack, Queen, King. So 13 cards. 13 cards times 4 suits is 52 cards. 26 times 2, right? Or 13 times 4. So there's your 52 cards. I'm defining my cards here in my faces. As an example, I'm just going to go into my Team Explorer and just sync up with you guys so that way you have what I have. I'm going to go to Changes, and I'll say Added Face Class. And I'm going to go to unsync commits and sync, so you have everything I have. Okay, cool. So now if I go back to program, I know I'm going slow, but if I want to do this, if I want to say face dot ace, if you notice I have a bunch of things I can choose, it makes it easy for me to choose this thing. But you know, if you notice, it's giving me an error because face dot ace is of type int, and my card is asking for strings, so I got to change this to from string to int. And of course, that's gonna also change my property from string to int. I got to do that as well, and then I'm good to go. Okay, makes sense. And of course, even my constructor has to change from string to int because that's going to change. Okay, makes sense. So all that's changing because I change my data type. Okay, let's run it and make sure it's the same. And I got a 1 of hearts. That's not what I wanted, really. I wanted ace of hearts, ace of hearts. But that's okay. I like the 1 of hearts because at least I know what that means, right? So that's a little different than what I had before. I had ace, the actual word ace, and king and queen and whatever. But for us, for our value, it's right. 1 of hearts is an ace of hearts. A 13 of hearts is a king of hearts. And we don't have to know. From a value perspective, we know what it is. But we don't know what the, we need to know the string. We don't want to convert up front. Okay. We're always doing this show function, right? This show method. But we also have some built-in methods, and we talked about overriding yesterday, right? So if you notice, if I go my card dot, right, I have a bunch of methods that are inherited from the object superclass, right, which is equals, get hash code, get type, and TwoString. Right? Well, I want you to override this TwoString method that comes with the object superclass, right? If we're going to do that, so I don't have to use my show method anymore, because show and I can kind of use the built-in TwoString method and change it, right? Let's do that. So I'm going to go into, which is what I'm going to ask you to do, by the way. This will work exactly how it's going to work here for your assignment number 3. So I go into my card class. And down where I have my method, that's why I put methods, I'm going to say overridden methods. Did I spell that properly? I don't know if I did that right. Anyways, I'll know in a second if I spelled it right. I'm going to, instead of using the show method here, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to keep some of this in a second, but I'm going to change what it says here from TwoString. Right? Because I want to change my TwoString method that exists already, and I want to go instead of void, I want to change this. Well, first of all, the output for TwoString is string, right? When I convert it to string, so the name TwoString implies that I should return a string, and I shouldn't be returning a void, right? The other thing is I want to do an override, right? Because the TwoString method in the object superclass is a virtual method that can be overwritten. Right? I don't know if you guys know that. So let's just put the override in there. Yeah, I spelled this wrong. Override, overridden. Sure. So if you notice, it says TwoString override, and it's give me an underline because it says I need a return, right? I can't do a string return type and not return a string. Right now I'm just doing a console.writeLine. So here what I'm going to do is change this thing just to say return, right? I'm going to return this string, right? That's what I want to do. And of course, instead of doing this face and this suit the way it is, I'm just going to do concatenation in this particular case. I'm going to go this dot underscore face plus, and use the plus operator for concatenation. And instead of the stand-in values, I'm just going to take away this and put of, right? And of course, I don't need the comma anymore, and I can put a plus. Remember what it was like before when we built it. You can do string concatenation. This is a string, or actually this face is a number. I'm adding it to this, and I'm actually combining it with this. Okay, so if this is right, I can use my TwoString method now instead of a show method, which is I'm overriding the built-in method TwoString, which is part of the object superclass that exists with all objects. So one less thing to show for the user. It'll be the TwoString method. And by the way, this is a very common method that we override, right? Okay, let's go back to program. I got an issue with show. It doesn't exist anymore, right? And I can go TwoString. I can do that, but I need to assign it somewhere, right? So now, again, there's a couple ways to write this. I'm going to do it all in one line, like I showed you yesterday. Console.writeLine, and then my card TwoString, right? I'm putting in the value that I get back from my card TwoString, and I'm using that. I'm putting that inside the WriteLine method, so it's going to output the string. Okay. Let's check that out and make sure that it works. 1 of hearts. Good to go. Right? What have we done at this point? We've created a card class, a container class for our cards, right? Okay. For those of you who are, have a weak stomach, this is where it gets like, you're gonna see something called, we're gonna compile a new class out of the stuff from the old class, right? We're gonna use elements of this custom class that I've created to create our new deck class, right? Deck of cards, or deck, if you will. Okay, so we got a card class, and this all works nicely. This is just our test here, so we're gonna leave this test in place for now, right? But I can use the same methodology, this new card, face, ace, and suit of hearts, and so on, right? I can do this kind of thing. But I want to do this, I want to initialize my deck by adding in 52 of these things, right? 52 cards. How do I do such a thing, right? Well, first of all, we don't have a deck class, right? How about the other questions we have before we move on? How can I do this? How come I'm doing this, right? As opposed to, if I go to my program here, I've got static void main, right? Static void for my thing. For my private static and public static, this is, by the way, a private method that's inside of my class, not accessible outside of this class, which is my program class. But isn't it right then for me to make my suits and faces static? Well, where would I add static? Before the constant? Well, let's take a look if I can even do it. So if I say public static const, does it accept it? Right? Static means that it's a container class, right? So if I do this for everything, actually, let's do it for one, and I'll build it and see what we're talking about here. If I build my solution in this case, it's going to error out and say the constant cannot be marked static because constants and statics are incompatible, right? And you have to know that. And I do either one or the other. If I make it static or constant, but not both. If I do this, right? Public static int. Can I do this? Let's save this and try this out. And again, I'll just build. I won't run it. Build's okay. So I can do this, and then I never have to instantiate my class, right? And if I want to go and just to do a test to see in my program, can I access my ace, right? Let's check this out. If I say anywhere face.ace, it's there, but look at the difference. Here I have a constant. Here I have a static property, right, that I could change. Static doesn't mean that I can't change it. Static means that it's something that I don't have to instantiate. It means that it's always there. The variable is something that's shared, and I never have to instantiate. It's a container variable, if anything, right? But that's not what I want. I don't want this symbol here that tells me it's a variable. I need it to be a constant, so I can never change. It should never change. The suits and the faces, or the faces and the suits should never change. They're always going to be the same value, right? So this is why it's container. It's a container variable that holds. It's a variable first of all, and it's something that's available without instantiation, just like constants are in some ways. Okay, in this particular usage, because I'm not instantiating my class. Now, in other languages, you can only use. There is no constants. Sometimes there's only statics. Some languages have that. JavaScript is a good example of that, where you don't have typing in JavaScript. But other languages, they use the word final, for example, in Java, right? And to kind of sub in static. But you could also see static, and why can't I use static and constant? Well, they're in conflict. Talk about that later. So I could do that. I could do that, but it doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to go back and just, in my faces, and just change this back to constant, which is really what I want. Constant, all I'm doing here with this class, it's kind of an empty class, right? I'm not sending it anything. I'm only reading it, right? It's a public, when I make it public and constant, it's almost like I set up some values that I want to grab. I can't use, if I use new, like if I kind of instantiate a new faces object, I don't know why I would do such a thing, but if I wanted to say something like face, my face, right, is equal to new face, right, it won't error out. It won't error out because I can create a new face called my face. And then I can do the same thing. Well, then you know what, my face, right, dot, and then I'm trying to access my properties here, and hey, where are they all? How come I don't have access to all of my properties in my faces? Let me take a look here. Here's my face. There's all these constants, right? I don't have access to any of them, even though they're public. How come? For the same reason, right? Even though they're public and constant, these constants are inside. It doesn't matter if I put public or not, right? These constants are only available within my class, right? And when I make it public, if I instantiate a member of this class, this is where it gets funky, right? I won't see the new because of my constructor. I don't have a constructor. It's the empty constructor. It creates one for me, and I don't have any access at all.
So it's public, then why it's not accessible?
You tell me. Here, I'll try doing this again. Public my face. Okay. How about this? Let me see if I can instantiate this by itself, right? And I'll try and build it. Here, I'll try and build it instead of running it. So build. So my build succeeded. That's pretty cool. I go back down and type my face. Hey, I can't even access. My code hinting is gone, right? How come? Well, that's kind of a glitch with Visual Studio, by the way. But really, at the end of the day, I can't access. If I go myface.ace, right? I want to say myface.ace, and I want to kind of use that. It says, if I underline it, it says error. Only assignment, call, increment, decrement, await, and new object expressions can be used as a statement. Right? This isn't something that makes sense to the compiler. It doesn't know what I'm trying to do here. Right? If I say something like this, int, face card is equal to my face ace, right? Which is kind of what would make sense if I did this, right? I still get the same thing. It says cannot be accessed with an instance reference quality. Qualify it with a type name instead. Right? In other words, I have to convert this thing, right? Like if I go back to my faces, even though I've got an int here, once I put this constant here, man, it messes you up for what it can be accessed outside of the class. Just letting you know, when you look at constants and you see this kind of this notation, it's not the same as when we see other instance variables. Okay? So that's why it's working the way it does. If you want to learn more about it, you can certainly look up on MSDN and to try and understand why constants work like statics in some ways. Okay?
Do we even have to put it public? Because there's no use of
Okay, let's try that. I like your thinking again. Let's take the public away from this one and see if it works. So public, static, and then if I go here, can I access it? Right? It's all accessor, right? Accessor. That's what it gives me, right? If I make this private, it's the same thing. If I went to faces, instead of public, I made a private const, int, ace, right? As an example, private. First of all, I wouldn't give it this name.
So
But if I go here again, if I go to program and I try and access it, I can't access it.
yeah, so earlier it error out because when you try to instantiate the object for this particular class.
And there's nothing to instantiate really. It's just a bunch of values,
Yeah.
right? And it's when I use my constant keyword, it's not the same as creating a public or private variable. This isn't a variable. This is a constant. It's always the same, right? So I'm using this class as just accessing. I'm just accessing this class. That's all I'm doing. Okay.
Just wondering, in this class it's just constants. Why should we be using a separate class just to define the properties of a card? Why should we even have to put in a class? Can't we just make the constants in the main program?
I could.
For example.
I could. But that means that the main program, right, which would house everything here, if I was going to port my stuff to another program later on, I want to have a separate class. It's easier to port, right? That's the other reason for it. And also, I want it to be accessible here. If I did it in here, like if I did it right in here, if I said, I could do that. I could say const, use my constant keyword, int, my integer, whatever it is equal to 5, right? And if you notice, it says my int is assigned, but its value is never used. Then I could just simply say something like this in my code somewhere. I can kind of start typing my int, right? And I could print my int out, console.writeLine, right? I could do that, send my int out to the console, and it would work because I have it defined here and I'm using it here. So I could do what you're saying, no problem, right? If it's easier for you to see it, put it in here, right? But all I would do is, the reason why I'm accessing faces and suits, it gives me context as well. See, it says an ace, a face, that's an ace, a suit, that's a heart, right? And that's another thing for me. It gives me a context to see what it is, right? As opposed to just the naming convention itself tells me what it is, right? So from a programming perspective, it helps me align and configure my code. I don't need it. I can put in strings and a number if I want. But I'm using it as a way to quickly access those variables without thinking about, if I put in a 2, it means 2. If I put in a 3, it means 3. I don't have to do that. Okay. Let's get rid of this. We've done our card example. I've explained as best as I can the stuff with constants and statics. Again, you're going to see that more often. If it bothers you, again, you could not use them in this example if you wanted to, if you don't quite understand. It's something you're going to have to get used to, though, because you're going to see it in a lot of programs. Let me just run it again to make sure it's not broken. It's not broken yet. Okay, good. Now let's create our deck class. All right, and then I'll take a small break, right, because I know it's a lot of concentration all at once for everybody, right? Some people are already dying. I've already killed her. Look at her. She's dying over there. Just like in Dog Day Afternoon. Ever saw Dog Day Afternoon with Al Pacino? It's an old movie, way before your time. So, I'm dying over here, right? That kind of thing. All right, that's bad impression. Anyways, add new item. I'm going to go to deck. My new class is going to be called deck. Okay, and then press add. Here it is. Okay, so my deck is going to have a new construct. I'm going to create a string or some kind of array of cards, right? So I know I need to make a card array. So here is where we're going to have our new funky data that you've never seen before, right? So I say I'm going to make a new card array, right? So again, now I'm making an array of objects, not an array of strings or integers or other data types. An array of objects called cards, right? We've named them cards. And of course, I'm going to call it card. It's going to be private because, you know, I shouldn't have to know what my cards are, right? So because we're making it be a private instance variable, if you will, right? I should underscore it with card, like this, right? My card array is equal to new, right, card, and I could do a couple things. I could specify how big it is, which I know it's going to be 52 cards, right? That's the first thing I need. And I've kind of made room for all these 52 cards, right? Do you understand this notation? What am I doing here? I'm using it private. My access modifier for my card this is just a holder for my cards, right? And I've called this my deck. I have a card array in my deck, right? A card array is an array, a bunch of elements of objects. Well, my objects, this particular object, has a couple of values here, right? It holds faces and suits. So it's not just a single value. Okay, what do I mean by that? So if I do this, right? And now, of course, I want to deal my card. So I want to create my empty constructor just for a second. So I'm going to call this card deck, right? So public deck, and I'm not going to put anything in the constructor yet. Okay. So there's my deck of cards, right? And I'm using I've declared it of type card, but the cards don't have any values, right? They're empty cards. I haven't defined every single card yet. The cards could have an integer and a string value, each of them, right? Each element now is not just an element of one value, of one data type. It's of my custom data type. My custom data type is called card, right? That's what I'm doing, okay? And I'm putting in there an integer and a string, and it's mashed together inside that one element, right? So I have one space, but that one space is holding my object. It's not holding a string or an integer or a double, right? It's my object. Are you guys getting it? This is where object-oriented programming gets very, very powerful. Example, I make a bunch of alien objects, and I want to show them in my game, right? If you're a game programmer, right? I create my alien object, I give it all of its properties and methods, and then I replicate it 1,000, 10,000 times in an array, right? Let's just say however many I want, right? And then I could just show that alien, kill that alien, do something with that alien. And each alien, although they're identical in clones of every other alien, just like the cards are clones, each card is identical in terms right now. They're all uninitialized, right? When I say new card, I haven't actually sent a card into the array, right? I haven't put a new card into the array at all, right? All I'm doing is I'm creating a space, right, that'll hold my card class, my card objects. I have 52 spaces put aside for that can contain my card objects. 52 spaces from 0 to 51, because we're zero-based indexing, right, here in C-style languages. Okay, cool. Well, I know this is my constructor, and for now, let's just leave my constructor alone. And I'm going to leave my private variable there alone for a second too. We're going to come back to it. So here's my constructor, and my constructor doesn't do anything right now. It's just an empty constructor, right? And if I was to instantiate my deck, right, a new deck of cards, create a new deck of cards, right, from this, so I go back to my program, and I just go something like this. If I say, I'm just going to instantiate it here. Let's see if it works. Just the way it is. Deck, my deck is equal to new deck, right? As an example. Let's see if this builds. Because if I'm wrong and I've done it incorrectly, well, then it wouldn't build, right? It would kind of have an error. So this works. I have a new object called deck, but my deck, I have a private I want to access the cards from my deck, each card. Well, that means I need some kind of get accessor method for my array. Yeah? So let's go back into my deck, because otherwise I can't see anything. If I go into deck, my deck, right, dot, and put that in there, but I'm not getting any code hinting at all anyway. Let me just close all this down for a second, because that's what sometimes fixes it. If you get this problem with code hinting, sometimes what you have to do is shut these things down, right? This is Visual Studio Glitch 101, right? And reopen up your program and start typing my deck again and see if you get my code hinting's back, see? So if you lose your code hinting, I don't have access to anything but the standard stuff. Equals, get hash code, get type, TwoString, and I don't have anything else in there. I don't have access to my properties because they're private, right? And my private array, I want to be able to say, you know, my deck card 1, my deck card 2, you know, whatever it's going to be, card 0, card 1, card 2, whatever it's going to be, right? You know, as an example, I want to be able to access those things. In order for me to do that, I have to think differently. I have to go back to my deck. I know I've called it card, right? But this doesn't make any sense because I have more than one card. The proper name for this would be cards because it's an array of cards, right? That makes more contextual sense at this point, right? So that's the first thing, cards, the cards array, right? And I have to make a property. How do I do a property with an array? We've never done that before, right? How do I access? This is where my get accessor method is going to be different than just how it was before, right? Because I want to show or I want to get the values of my card array. There's two things I can do. I can create a get accessor method, or I can create a separate method that actually shows the deck, the card that I'm asking for, right? Because I'm asking for probably one card. I don't want to see my whole deck, typically. I don't go like this, hey, show me my whole deck, and I put the deck in front of you, right? Typically. I see one card at a time. Like I pick a card from the deck, right? I want to pick the top card for my deck, right? So the card that's on top. And how is this array stacked? When I put in cards, I load them at the bottom, right? It stacks up, right, from the bottom up. So usually it goes, the first card is card 0, and on top of that is card 1, card 2, card 3, all the way to the top. So it's my last card that I want to grab off the top of the stack, if you will, right? Again, this is just conceptualizing how I'm going to show this card. So I can't really do a properties thing for this thing. I need to do some kind of, because I'd have to do it for every one of the cards, right? And that doesn't make any sense. Because if I do this, if I go public, right, and if I go card, right, cards, that's how it would look, right? You see how that looks, public card cards, right? And then if I say a getter, right, I could do this, and I'm going to return, what am I going to return, right? This dot underscore cards. That's what I'm returning, right? Well, here's a problem. Here's where I get into an issue. Look what I have a problem with. It says, cannot implicitly convert type cards, right, which is one card, to, and I can't do this either. I can't go cards, the whole cards array, right? I can't do this, can I? That would give me an error because there's nothing inside of this. There's a value that's expected in there, right? I could run through a loop, right? A loop and return, you know, a bunch of cards. But this property methodology right now works nicely for one single instance variable, not an array, right? Doesn't work nicely for that. So this won't work for me. I can't return the cards array, right? I can't just go this.cards and return it. It won't allow me to in this context, right? Because I'm trying to return, you know, an array of cards. I can't return just the whole, a reference to the array without using the ref keyword. I don't want to do that. That's ugly, right? Let's kill that. So that doesn't work. So I need to create some kind of method to get a card. So maybe something like, you know, pick a card, or you know, almost like preview a card. What's the card on top? Show card on top. Something like that. So let's just call you know, pick card. We'll have a pick card method. That's what I'm going to call it. I know I'm going to probably I need to make this public, right? And it's going to return. I'm not going to return a value necessarily. I could, and maybe what I want to do, thinking about it, is if I want to pick a card, right? Not deal the card, but pick a card off the top of the stack for my cards, then I want to return the value of the card, right? So what is my return going to be, right? A string, most likely, right? Because that makes the most sense. So it's going to be a combined string of what I'm getting from the deck. I'm going to convert it to string, right? Wait a minute. Convert it to string, to string, to string. That's almost like I can use the TwoString method again. But in this particular case, I need to know which card you're talking about. So I can't use this card. I need to know the card that you're talking about. So I'm going to put it in card. Now, card lowercase, not card uppercase, and it's going to be the index. So it's going to be an integer. Okay? Bear with me here. Even though I'm using the same word, card, cards, this is the integer. I need to make a return type. I'm getting the return. I'm returning a string. That's what I need to have in there, right? And I'm going to be picking the card from the array, right? That's the first thing I need to do. So if I want to get the card from the array, what am I returning? I'm returning this dot underscore cards, and then my index, which is card, right? That's what I'm returning, which is going to be of, if you notice, it says it's giving me an error because the card, when I access that thing, what am I returning? Well, there's two pieces to that, right? One of them is the face of the card, right? Here's my face of the card. And the other one, right, because this is how it accesses, this dot underscore cards, card, I will, sorry. I want to do both of these, face and the suit, right? I want to be able to produce that in a string, right? So I get a card index, don't do this yet, and I want to return these two things, right? So of course I want to use string interpolation, right, to print out this. Well, hold on, I have this already, right? This thing that I'm trying to do, it's part of my card, that's why I say don't type it yet. It's part of my card array. So I'll say this dot underscore cards, right, of type card, right, TwoString. That's why I made my TwoString thing. So then I don't have to do that whole line, right? Does that make sense? I'm losing you guys, huh? It's okay. Because, let's go back. Let's trace this back. I haven't built my cards yet, but each card in the cards array has the same capabilities as an individual object, right? It has this overridden string, TwoString method, which does the face of and the suit, right? Yeah.
Which method are you overriding here?
The original TwoString method that comes with all objects from the object superclass. If I make a new object, every object I make, any class I make, has, in addition to the stuff I add to it, TwoString. Here, I'll show you. If I go to program, if I go to my deck now, hold on a second, my deck dot, and if I go, it has TwoString. Oh, here's my pick card I just defined. Get type, get hash code, and equals. All those things are built-ins that come with the object superclass. But I'm overriding in my card class, I'm overriding the TwoString built-in method so that I can use it. And that's why I did it. I did it in advance so that way when I go and do this with my deck, when I want to pick a card for my deck, right, pick card, I can send in an index. Which card do I want to pick? 0 to 51, right? And I want to output, I want to return this string back out to where I'm calling it. Okay, that's the first thing I want to do, is pick card method, right? So this is a public method, so I'm going to put that in there. Okay, it's okay if you don't follow along here. I need to introduce these advanced concepts because you're going to get them, right? Here's the thing that you have to also know. This is an instance variable, instance variables, right? Here's what these are here. I don't have any properties so far for my deck class, right? And if you notice, my constructor is I've defined it as an empty constructor, but really it's called, I've redefined the empty constructor. I don't really need to do this right now, right? I could have left it empty and it would have been the same, right? I've defined an array, an empty array, by the way, of type card, right? Which means it has the shape that can hold objects of type card. I'm saying type because I've defined a new data type when I made my card class. You can't just think of a card class or a class as a blueprint. You should also think about it as a data type in certain ways because it has values. Yes?
So I'm following. So that return statement is basically saying that in the square brackets, that whatever integer represents whatever cell of that array is going to go to the
TwoString.
TwoString method, which will show it. Okay, then I'm caught up.
Because the TwoString method belongs to each of the cards, right? So I'm using the TwoString method of this specific card that I've sent into, that I'm accessing in the array. I'm accessing it by saying, hey, I'm using this card integer as an index to tell me which card in the 52 card array that I'm accessing to print a string. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Okay, that's the first thing I need to do. So I can pick a card, right? I also need to kind of place a card because I'm going to use that. I'm going to make this method private, right, for now. So I'm going to say private method. So I'm going to kind of add a card to the array, right? And if just for now, I might come back to this and erase it later. But for now, let's just make a private method that doesn't return anything, right? And what we're going to call it is add card. Right? It's going to be an internal method, and I want to pass it an integer, right? Card index. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this dot underscore cards, right? Card, right? And I want to say I'm going to do two things. My face is going to be equal to something, right? The face of the card. Let's go back. Look, face of the card is going to be equal to something, and this dot underscore cards, the suit of the card. If I can actually type properly. The suit of the card is going to be equal to something, right? Well, if I need them to be equal to something, I kind of set them here too, right? So I'm probably going to have to pass in an integer for the face and an integer or a string for the suit. I need to do that, right? So that means that my integer is going to be the face of the card, right, which I don't have yet, and my suit is going to be the suit of the card, which I don't have yet either. Oops, I make that capital, it should be lowercase. Sorry, that's my typing error. And you'll see this in a second, right, because integer and faces. And how come it's giving me an error? It's saying I can't do this, right, because it's read-only, right? I can't do this. I'm trying to set this up. But my problem is I'm using the wrong accessor. Which way can I, this is what you'd think you can do, right? And you'd be pardoned for thinking this. But wait a minute. Didn't we make face and suit only readable but not writable? How do we write the card? We can never rewrite the card. We can only ever create a card once. How do we create the card? Well, we create the card by doing this. This cards, right? Bear with me. Card, oops. Card, right, is equal to what? New card, right? And when we put a new card, we need a face. That's how we wrote the constructor, right? Face and a suit, right? Which would be, here's my face and here's my suit. That's the way we've written it. Are you with me? Because what I'm doing is I'm saying each of my cards now, I'm going to initialize. This add card is going to initialize, right, this particular element in my array, which is of type card, right, to the new face and suit that I'm going to pass into the method right here. Now this add card method, by the way, I'll be honest with you, is redundant, right? Because I can just use this one line here into some kind of loop, which I'm going to create later on, that'll create my loop for building my card deck. By the way, I'm going a very long way around this whole thing. There's much easier ways of doing this, right? But I'm doing this because I want to demonstrate compiled. If I take two classes, right? One that I've already created a custom class, and now I want to use my card class, and I want to use that card class to create an array of cards right? How do I do it? Because the idea here is that we use arrays of strings and arrays of integers and arrays of other things, but we want to make an array of cards. Okay, this is what this thing does. And I can only do this, as an example, I can only do this internally right now because it's a private method. So let's, in our constructor, let's add one card to the deck. We have spaces for 52 cards, but I'm only going to add one. So let's do this. So I'm going to say this dot add card. Oh wait, oh man, I made a mistake. This is bad. What do I need to do with private methods? I need to use the underscore. Why? It's a private method. Private methods and private instance variables, I need to use an underscore because it tells me, the programmer, to remind me that this is a private method that's only accessible inside of my class. Underscore add card, right? And what do I want to add? I need an integer for the card. I'm going to put 0 for the integer for now. My face, this is where it gets interesting. I'm going to go faces, or face, dot, ace, just like we did before, right? And my string, which is suit, or suit. How come I can't get my suit, man? Here it is. Suits dot hearts, right? Just like I normally would. I did the same thing in my experiment out here in my program. Look, face and suits, right? Maybe what I should change this, instead of suits, I should change to suit, because that's what I've been using, right? Although I kind of renamed it this way, so for now let's leave it the way it is. But really, from a contextual perspective, we're close. We're close. We're not accurate. I probably should have made this suit instead of suits. That's fine. So here I am. I've been very careful and slow about putting this together. I've added one card, the first card, right, which is right here. The card 0, which is the first card, and I'm making it the ace of hearts. Ace of hearts. Okay, cool, cool. Well, this is neat. I like this, but this makes no sense if I loop. I can't loop faces and hearts. Can't do that, right? I can loop numbers and strings. Well, that's the power of this thing, right? That's why I made this a number for a value. Okay, but I'm setting up the value for each of my cards. Let's try this out. Let us leave it like this. And if I was to build this thing, let's see, build a solution, make sure there's no issues, no errors. If I go to my program now, in order for me to implement this thing, I don't need a card. This card is useless now. I don't need this anymore. I want to take my deck. I want to create my deck, right? And once I do this, let's get rid of this card. Once I do this, I should be able to access the card of the first card of my deck. So how do I do that? My deck dot, right? And if you notice, I want to pick a card from my deck, and I want to pick which card. I'm going to tell it card 0 for now, right? Card 0. Well, if I do the pick card, actually it returns a string. So I'm going to go console.writeLine, and here is what I'm getting, right? So I'm going to kind of output this string, which is going to be hopefully one of hearts. It should come out, right? Let's try this out. The power of the universe is mine. One of hearts. I'm right. Do you see how I built this? Who does not understand, put their hand up. This is where the understanding goes, cuckoo, cuckoo, I don't get you. I don't know what you're doing, right? Recap before I break. Cards we created. The cards have two values, faces and suits. Right? Each card has two values, a key value pair, if you will. Right? Both key value pairs can be different. One day we're going to talk about collections, and we can do this a lot easier. Right? We're not using arrays, and so I'm making an array of cards. Right? But tomorrow I can make it a collection, a dictionary collection that has key value pairs built in. Then I don't have to define a card class at all. But today, this is a neat way of doing it. So I have an integer that's a face and a string that's a suit. Those are the two values that my card data type will hold instead of one value, which is normally a string or an int or float or something else, right? So two values, right? I have a way of accessing these two values. These are my properties. I have my get accessor methods to see them. The face accessor method and the suit accessor method that are both read-only. I can only read them this way. The only way I can set them right now, the way I've created it, is through my constructor, right? Where I create my new object, a card, all right? And in my deck, I use my custom card class, my deck is very small right now, to set aside spaces that'll fit each of my cards, my special custom data type that takes 2 data types, not one, an integer and a string. So my space, therefore, my elements for each of my arrays are much larger than a regular data type of string, because I have the space, I need space allotted for string, and I have a space allotted for integer, and they have 2 little smaller compartments, fields, within my larger element, right? That's what I'm doing. I'm holding those in there. I've only made the space here. I haven't assigned any values yet. But here, when I instantiate my deck, I call this inner or private method called add card. I only added 1 card, the first card, and I've physically assigned it, like explicitly assigned it, hard-coded it, if you will, an ace of hearts. Right? That's what I've done here by using my custom classes that I use for the container classes, face and suits, right? That I have my values in. Now I could certainly have typed it in. I could have said 1 hearts. Same thing, right? I'm just using these things because it's easier for me as a programmer to understand what they are. Okay? From a context perspective. I know it's silly, and I'm going to the next level with this thing. But I want you to understand what I've done here. Now, once I've done this, I've added the card. I have my pick card method, which is what I'm doing is I'm using the built-in TwoString method of now, or the overridden TwoString method of each of the card objects that I've put in here, right? And that's how I'm able to print out the string of cards, which comes from my card class, which is right here, right? I'm accessing this TwoString overridden method in my card class. Have I lost you guys? That's good. That's good. I'm glad I lost you. We'll go back. We'll come back to it again. Yes.
Let's see if I can understand. So basically, you instantiate the object in my deck, and then you choose from a private method that you created, pick card. You put you set the cell number as 0 from pick card, because in the pick card method that you made, it can accept a integer. And then in that method, it returns that cell number that you placed in there from the array that you made, and you TwoString it from, because you created also, you overridden
In the card class.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, I guess I got it.
So again, so you have to read it like this. What I'm doing is how many, here's another question for you before I break, all right? And I'll take a break for 5 minutes or so, and then we'll take a breather, and then we'll talk about it. And I'm not going to continue with this too much longer because I don't want to make you guys crazy, but we're going to continue next. After the break, I'm going to come back to this thing again, right? Because we haven't done our shuffle. We haven't done our creating our card deck yet. We've only created 1. How many, this is the question, how many objects are inside right now, the way it stands, is inside my deck, my cards array? 1. Which object, how could I access that object? I've done it already, right? 1 time. How do I access it? Because I have to use the 0 index to say, it's just like I use array. If I access an array, I have to use these square brackets to tell me which element in the array, right? Well, I'm telling it which element. I'm saying the first element, the 0th element here, right? I'm passing in 0, which means, hey, add the first element to the array. Here it is, and I want to make it of this type, face and this, a face card and a suits. I want building my array up. Right? I'm building my card, my deck. I can do this 1 by 1. If I really wanted to, I could add a bunch of cards right here, all 1 at a time. But that's inefficient. So I got to figure out a way after we come back. I'm going to take a short break. How do I do this in a loop?